What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How to Lead podcast, a conversation designed to help you lead yourself and those around you. I'm Adam, joined by Clay. Clay, LinkedIn, we like that social media platform. They just put an interesting article out recently talking about 25 jobs on the rise. I love those kind of lists that they're looking at. Just where is the job market right now? What are some of the skills that are out there? We know a lot of people that listen to this podcast think about this. They got to think about this from a recruiting standpoint. They got to think about this from their own career standpoint. So a couple of interesting insights in here that we thought would be really relevant to talk about.
Well, we're going to link to the article, obviously, so that you can peruse it yourself. I do love, ever since college, when I took my first statistics class in the industrial engineering program at Georgia Tech, and the professor stood at the front of the class at the beginning of the semester and said, "My chief goal in this class is to train you to be the data-driven voice of truth for the rest of your life."
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
If he could see you now.
She,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. But I will say, I've never forgotten that line. Oh my gosh, that is lofty. And
Yes.
am I willing to accept this new stamp of mission on my life to be the data-driven voice of truth? But when I first saw you, when you and I were discussing this list, that was my first thought about this list was, I am grateful that LinkedIn has said, hey, we're going to use our data. We've got a lot of data on jobs that are being added, and these are the most popular ones. And so this is not here's some trends, here's some thoughts, here's some potential shifts. No, these are the top jobs that have been added. And
yes.
so that's not, we're not here to necessarily argue with the list or even really discuss the list in general. What we've done is we've said, hey, let's take the list and let's try to mine a few insights that you and I might have as we peruse this list. So obviously we're going to link to the list in the show notes. You can look at that yourself, but we're going to throw out some, any just initial thoughts when you looked at it?
Well, some of it was so in line with expectations for the first few, because it was all about artificial intelligence. I was like, wah, wah, here we go. Okay. But then it totally threw a curveball at number 4, right? Like number 4 on the list was so surprising and really encouraging because it's the industry we're in.
To back up even to number 3, because you're right. It goes artificial intelligent engineer, number 1, artificial intelligent consultant, number 2, physical therapist.
Physical therapist. Like, what?
So in person, in the moment, we need physical therapists. Which
that's right.
I think it underscores one of the big insights that's going to come out of this is that, yes, AI is taking over, but no, it is not going to make us as human beings obsolete. But
that's
to your
right.
point, number 4, what was number 4?
It was the training and development. So a workforce development manager was number 4, which it can also, I love that it could also be known as a learning and development manager, chief talent officer, those types of things, which is the world, the waters we swim in, and that's what we do for a living. So that was really encouraging to see. But the physical therapist was kind of funny. My snarky side was like, well, because we're all just sitting in chairs all day, our backs hurt. And so we've got to go get physical therapy because we're so sedentary all the time. But okay, so let's put a couple observations on there. You already gave a little clue to one of them. So AI is taking over, meaning it is a hot job market right now. But so are human-centric skills. So number 1 and number 2, AI engineer, AI consultant, those are up there at the top of the list. But there's also a bunch of jobs that still need emotional intelligence, planning, relationship building. Those are still there. So things like we just talked about, physical therapist, people development manager, travel advisors, event coordinators, those were also on the list, which are very, very human-centric. And I thought that was interesting.
Big shout out to Brian Yee, one of the most popular, one of the most hard to book a session with physical therapists in Atlanta. Brian is so good at his job. He's in high demand, but I think that's just one example of why these human-centric skills are important. We all there are still those moments in life where you need someone who can guide you, someone who can direct you, someone who has the wisdom and experience and insight to be able to say, hey, here's my advice on how to handle this situation, which is what number 4 is as well, the workforce development manager. But I think it raises a couple of questions, Adam. And I am very interested in discussing number one more. For the sake of our podcast, we'll probably have to even trim down how long we spend on this one. But we are certainly seeing, and maybe I'll form it in a question, are we seeing a resurgence of soft skills in tech-driven workplaces?
So I can speak from my limited experience. I work with a lot of companies, not all of them, but I work with a lot of them. And it continues to be not only a huge felt need, but it continues to be something that a lot of people are asking about. And I think Daniel Goleman's research, that 90% of what allows you to climb that success ladder after a certain number of promotions, because
That's right.
As we all know, those first few promotions are all generally very technical in nature. What gets you to the top of the mountain, generally speaking, is going to be those people skills. And so how are you at wrangling, developing, motivating, inspiring, whatever words you want to use, people? That still is going to be a big part of success. So yeah, I think regardless of the tech side of all of it, that's going to be a big felt need.
And unless you are just an absolute expert at what it is that you do, it's rare to find someone that is so good at their job that can go to their employer and say, lock me in a closet, let me do the thing that I do, and don't make me have to talk to anyone.
That's right.
That's just really, really rare. I would say obviously most jobs, you're going to have to work with people. You're going to have to talk to people. Now, obviously, depending on the job, might depend on how much that is going to entail. But yeah, you and I both have managed people. We've worked with people where we both have had to tell them, hey, if another person comes and tells me that they do not enjoy working with you, you cannot work here any longer.
That's right. That's right.
People have to have a good experience working with you, or else it's just not going to work out. So yes, I don't know, similar to what you said, I don't know that I have a perspective enough to say, oh yeah, holistically speaking, I can say at tech companies, they are investing in soft skills, but I would just imagine that those are not going away, that they're still going to be of great value for sure.
Yeah.
Another question, what would you say, is there a way, and you might not have an answer to this, it might just be for our listeners to think about on their own, but how can leaders balance the integration of AI with also fostering human connection?
Yeah. Got to be time, right? There's a couple of thoughts swirling in my head with this right now, a couple of sound bites that I've heard. And I'm trying to remember, I think we put this on one of our episodes at the end of last year. Like, if you're not using these new AI tools on a daily basis, like, you're already behind. And so what I see right now where you can get both is use these tools and then get the humans in a room and talk about what the tools are doing to help. I mean, that's it. It's just so it's like a big knowledge share is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of using, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using, use it, really thinking about it like an intern, that helps with that, right? That this isn't my end all be all, but this is really, it has a seat at the table. It's a voice on our team. We're going to allow it to give us insight on this customer survey data, but we're also going to figure out what to do with the insight as well. So I think it does seem like we're moving into a world that's requiring or demanding even some kind of integration of AI with human connection as well.
Yeah. So that's been the best advice. You when we recorded that episode, that idea of thinking about it like an intern, bringing it to the table as often as possible. And then I'm noticing in my, when I get around my clients and I'm doing live training sessions, I am purposely working in a 20 to 30 minute sidebar conversation on how are you using this tool right now. And I'm finding for leaders, because we're all on the front lines of this. Like, everybody's a pioneer right now, that just the knowledge share of I've been doing it this way, and it is adding so much value. So I'm seeing it really foster connection. It's kind of what we used to do. We used to read the newspaper to give us something to talk about, and now this is just get in the room and talk about how you're using AI.
Yeah, that's right.
That's your conversation starter, and that can go a long way. So good for those of us that are listening that are very career minded, like most people are that are listening to this. Yes, you can't ignore AI, but these human-centric skills are still there, and I think that data is being proven out on these these jobs, the hot jobs right now that LinkedIn is seeing. Our other observation, let's move on to number 2, and that's this idea of just like this rise of hybrid skills.
Yeah.
And, the word hybrid, oftentimes, even when you and I, before we hit record, I was thinking, oh yeah, we got to learn how to use Zoom, sooner or later. But I'm like, hold on, I don't think that's what hybrid really means in this particular situation. Like, if you don't know how to use Zoom and Teams, then you probably don't have a job right now. So everybody knows how to do those hybrid skills. But this is very insightful, because what this really means is that all of us need to become that Swiss Army knife. That's what we mean by this rise of hybrid skills. That, yeah, you may have gone to college. Like, I went to college to become an accountant. I've got those accounting skills, but I had better add some other skills to my repertoire if I want to be successful in today's job market. And so I love that observation that came out in this, because it's really showing that when you can wear multiple hats, that's really going to help you stand out in today's job market. Is that what you saw there as well?
Yeah, I mean, some of the examples of the fast-growing roles that we saw on that list, an AI consultant or even a sustainability specialist, right? Jobs like that, they require a mix of technical expertise, but also strategic thinking. I think these hybrid skills, they blur the lines between the traditional job categories, which makes adaptability and cross-disciplinary knowledge essential. So yes, I think if you want to be a successful professional, you've got to learn how to bridge the technical know-how with strategic vision, creativity, and leadership. A couple questions that I thought were worth either discussing or either offering to our listeners to discuss with your teams. But how are hybrid roles redefining career paths and expectations for employees? I think that's worth discussing.
It really is, yeah, because again, it's like, hey, you have a degree or you have a couple of things on your resume of things that you've done, but it kind of points back to what you and I were talking about even before we hit record on this, the David Epstein's book that came out, I think in like 2017, 18, long before the pandemic, his book Range, which was talking about, specialists versus the generalists. So you take the Tiger Woods of the world that have been so focused on one discipline since the time they were 3 years old. Are they more successful? Or is it maybe somebody like me, right, that has dabbled in so many different careers and so many different things, where I would not call myself a specialist. I would say I'm more of a generalist. There's a whole bunch of different things that I can do. And looking back on it, I think those hybrid skills have been immensely helpful for me. And I know I'm not alone on that. And so again, I just think that's where it's going. And so we can't say no to learning some new skills, regardless of our age. We've got to add them, and that'll help us.
The thing that it gives me hope to think about the way you see career paths take what feel like sharp left turns, but then you end up see 10 years down the road, oh, wow, now I see how that, the education degree in the 2 years that I got teaching second grade is now integrating with my time in IT, and I'm now working for an educational institution that's creating software in education, or it feels like we're seeing that more and more, where I think there was a time where we saw our career path as linear, but we all know it looks more like a jagged line, right? Left, right, way over here. Oh, took another sharp left turn. And so I think it just gives us some hope that, hey, if you did take a big career turn, or you're thinking about taking a big career turn, and you're like, yeah, but what about my 10 years in construction? What's going to happen to that? My guess is 10 years down the road, you're going to look back and go, whoa, I didn't see all that coming together so well, but it certainly has.
Yeah, everybody's career ends up like the end of a Seinfeld episode. Just all the plot lines come together at the end, and it's magical when it happens. And so, listen, the very relevant thing, there's some people that just maybe got some news in the last 2 weeks that they're going to have to take on responsibility of something that they feel totally over their head. They don't know how to do it. They're going to have to go do a bunch of research. And I think we could borrow from Jocko here and just go, good, right? Like, it's gonna hurt a little bit. You just put some, as John McGee would say, you just put a couple more plates on the bar, and so it's gonna hurt just a tad, but you're gonna learn some new skills. And so, and listen, nobody has the luxury right now of just being that specialist anymore. We've got to have some of these hybrid skills, and so I think that's good. Which then, you want to talk about one more thing there?
Yeah, let me just offer two more questions just for people to discuss before we jump to number 3. I would say this would be worth discussing with your team. As you think about hybrid skills or blended roles, what are the skills that professionals should prioritize in order to stay ahead? If it's true that there is a rise in hybrid skills, what are there specific skills that we should prioritize? And then another question would be just how can leaders encourage hybrid thinking within their teams?
Yeah, that's really good.
Instead of we need to add a position, is there a way to foster an environment or atmosphere or culture where people are seeing the potential development of a new skill as something that might actually be additive to their career for the sake of your team? I think that's a healthy conversation
really good.
to have as well.
Yeah, that's a great icebreaker question. I know we're looking for some of those fun questions with our team sometimes of like, hey, what's a skill you have now that when you graduated from college, it wasn't even on your radar? So like, what is a new skill that's been added since you graduated from high school or college? That could be an interesting icebreaker just to then show everybody to look around and go, we've all developed some new skills. We all have embraced this hybrid thing and it's coming together and we've seen how useful it is on top of those 2 questions that you asked. That could be really, really good. You want to talk about this third insight?
Yeah, the third big insight that we had is we looked at the roles on LinkedIn that have been most added in the last year. Number 3, adaptability is the new must-have skill. So I know we just asked the question, what skills should professionals prioritize? And we're going to go ahead and give you a head start on that one. Number 3, adaptability is the new must-have skills. There's so many of these roles, Adam, as I look through it, such as workforce development manager, even as we mentioned, the AI consultant. They demand an expertise in adapting to new tools and training. It demands that we learn these new skills, take on these new skills of tools, and training others to do the same thing as well. So I like the terms reskilling or even upskilling, right?
Yeah, very cool.
That these are becoming essential to stay relevant in the workforce. Any thoughts from you?
Well, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So adaptability for me, maybe before we had this conversation, I would have put it more as an attitude, like my reaction to change. And so it's really interesting to see it called a skill, right? Because to me, it was like, hey, listen, change happens, just be in a good mood about it and just roll with it. But I like that what we're seeing is that, no, this is an actual skill to develop. Am I off there? Have you had a similar reaction to that, or have you put that for you in your own thinking in the category of skill versus attitude? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Until now, I would not have thought adaptability is a skill. I would have thought, yes, it's an attitude. But I think if you think of it as resilience, right? Yeah. Resilience is not just an attitude. It is something that is like a muscle that can grow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've mentioned this before, but the first time you go through TSA, it's a little exhausting. You're like, why are all these people yelling at me? Why do I feel so much pressure? Why do I now have so much anxiety?
Why did I do something wrong?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You go through it a couple of times and you start going, okay, now I got the drill, right? Because the more you go through it, the better you get at going through it. And so that really is the idea of resilience, that you're able to go through it not only in less time, but also with less of an emotional strain.
Yeah.
And so I would say adaptability in the same way that it is like when you think of it like a muscle that you actually can work out. Yeah, sure. When you're 4 and you're being forced to adapt to something, that's really challenging to do. But I know, for friends that I have that grew up with divorced parents, that kind of grew up having to constantly pack their suitcase, they learn, no, that's a skill that I have. I've learned that, kids that grow up with multiple siblings, you got an older sibling always stealing your toy. You learn to start playing with other things. I think that's similar idea of necessity being the mother of invention. It really demands, it forces us to become more adaptable. So I think if we think of it as something that we can train ourselves in, it certainly does help us.
I like that.
A couple of questions that I think would be worth exploring. How can individuals and organizations build a culture of continuous learning?
Yeah.
How can we force ourselves to be introduced to new topics, new skills that would allow us to grow that muscle of adaptability?
Yeah. Man, the one thing that comes to my mind here, and I think we can take a page like from some parenting stuff that we experienced as kids growing up, when an authority figure just looks at you and just kind of says things like, well, listen, man, this is just life. This is just the way it is. The fair, there's nothing fair. The fair comes around once a year, and over there in the county fairgrounds.
Right? We're not selling cotton candy here.
That's right. I think if we want to create that culture of learning, then it starts at the top with the team leaders learning alongside with the team, and not just using this as well, you should have been ready for this change. This is just called the way it is. Just that maybe it comes down to some of the things that I know is near and dear to your heart with the choosing positivity in the midst of it, that attitude that you project in the midst of it. I think that goes so far with the culture. So it's not, again, if somebody's dealing with the change and they have an emotional reaction to it, you don't need to make them feel bad about that. Just help guide them along in it. That's what comes to mind for me.
Reverse mentoring can be such a help, right? To have somebody younger than you who's helping to translate and explain that I never stop being a learner, that no matter how old I get, no matter how high or low or wherever my position is, that I'm constantly trying to learn to stay adaptable, to force myself to really think about, all right, how can I grow in this skill? Another question to ponder or explore: what role should leaders play in reducing the overwhelm that's associated with workplace transformation? What role should leaders play in reducing that overwhelming feeling that's associated with workplace transformation?
Yeah, that I'll take a page from, it's like the practice of adaptive leadership. Just the fact that most change is U-shaped, that things get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
And I think just the honesty around that. So again, hey, this is going to be a change. We all have to adapt. I'm not telling you just to suck it up, but I am going to tell you things are probably going to get a little worse before they get better, and just the reality there with that. But again, good things to discuss on your team if you're listening to this as a senior leader and you've got some changes coming up. And listen, adaptability, it is a skill, but the first time you go through TSA, you can't just be like, hey, suck it up. You're going to get used to it. So you've got to not expect everybody to adapt as quickly as you do. These are some great questions and things that you can ask the team, and just go, is there anything I could do to make this easier on you? And one of the answers can't be just make the change go away, right? Like what else can I do? Can lead to some good conversations with all that. But
all right, Adam, last question for you before we wrap this one up. But was there anything that was just any job that you saw on the LinkedIn list of most added jobs that you just thought, ooh, I didn't know that was a job and I'm kind of interested?
Yeah. Well, no, yes. I mean, there were quite a few of them that I was like, oh, I didn't know what that is or what that job is. But the one that was surprising that's cracked the top 5 was the travel advisor.
Yes.
Right?
I was going to bring that up too.
Because it's like, what?
I just thought that went away. I thought when in the boom of the internet, didn't the travel advisors lose their role in society? Evidently not.
Thought so. So, I mean, I guess next time you're booking your cruise, you're not going to go to the internet. You're going to go down to some office that's going to have
Kelly
pictures.
At cruise.com.
They're going to have all these posters on the wall. You're going to get a brochure to look through.
That's right.
It's going to be able to do that. But again, it just shows that juxtaposition of number one, that AI's taken over, but we got to have the human-centric stuff. And listen, there's been times I've been booking travel. It's like, I just wish I could talk to a human right now.
Yeah.
And I guess that interaction that we all still want that's in there. But listen, I like this list because, again, we've got a lot of career-minded people that listen to this podcast that are looking forward to ways that they can level up, upskill, reskill, whatever it is that you want to do just to stay on top of things. And I think these are some good things to keep in mind, right? That there are, you got to be hybrid. Human-centric still rules, hybrid skills. We got to have a lot of different skills, and think about adaptability as a skill. You'll get used to going through TSA. I like that a lot. I think those will be really helpful things for this year.
All right, well, Adam, thanks. I hope this will give people some ideas and at least give you something to discuss, and maybe these insights will help you in your career. But I'm grateful that you brought this list to us.
Yeah, man. All right. Good to be with you. We'll talk to you next time.
See you.
Well, that's all we got for today's episode of the How to Lead podcast. You can always reach out to us via email. We can be reached at info@howtolead.work. That's info@howtolead.work. Every episode is mixed and edited by the team over at Sound of a Rose. You can learn more about them at soundofarose.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.